Raymond is a boy ignored by his father. After his father remarries, his resentment grows. When his stepmother becomes pregnant, Raymond's hatred reaches its peak, and through a seemingly harmless doll, he unleashes an ancient curse. In the end, he cannot escape the consequences of his actions. It was late at night, and the sound of raindrops hitting the window filled the quiet room. Raymond sat alone, staring blankly at an old doll in the corner. Ever since his father remarried, this house had changed. The warmth he once had was gone, replaced by coldness and neglect. Bella, a young and beautiful woman, had entered Raymond's life. She and his father were inseparable, and the whole house seemed to revolve around her. Meanwhile, Raymond felt like he was fading into the background, forgotten. What made things worse was when Bella became pregnant. The way his father cared for her, doted on her, it was more than Raymond could bear. Jealousy and anger burned in his chest. One day, his father tried to ease the tension by giving Raymond an old doll, saying it had been passed down through the family for generations, a symbol of unity. But Raymond only felt disgust when he looked at the worn-out doll. He tossed it into the corner and never paid attention to it again. As Bella's belly grew bigger, so did Raymond's hatred. Every time he saw his father caring for her, it felt like a sharp knife twisting in his heart. The rage inside him was growing uncontrollably. Finally, one rainy night, Raymond decided to act. His father was out, and it was just him and Bella in the house. Raymond saw her cleaning up the living room, and an evil thought flashed through his mind. He walked over to the corner, picked up the forgotten doll, and deliberately dropped it on the floor. "Can you pick this up for me?" he called to Bella. Without thinking, Bella bent down to pick up the doll. At that moment, Raymond reached out and pushed her hard. Bella fell to the ground with a thud, clutching her stomach as blood began to pool around her legs. She looked up at Raymond, eyes wide with shock and fear, while he stood there coldly, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction inside. Bella was rushed to the hospital, and though she survived, the baby didn't. Raymond's father was heartbroken, but Raymond put on a mask of innocence, even pretending to care about Bella. His father never suspected a thing and believed his son had no part in the tragedy. But the story didn't end there. That night, Raymond began to have nightmares. Every night, he would dream of the doll, but in his dreams, the doll was no longer still. Its eyes glowed red as it slowly moved towards him. In a cold voice, the doll whispered, "You will pay for what you've done." Raymond woke up in a cold sweat, only to find the doll sitting by his bedside, as if it had been waiting for him. Even though he tried to throw it away, burn it, the doll always mysteriously reappeared in his room, reminding him that his punishment was coming. As the nightmares continued night after night, Raymond's mind began to crack. He tried to act normal during the day, but the fear at night was unbearable. He started to believe that the doll was truly cursed. Each time he fell asleep, the doll grew closer, until one night it climbed onto his chest and wrapped its small, stitched hands around his throat, choking him. In the dream, Raymond struggled to breathe, his heart racing. His body felt like it was pinned down by an invisible force, unable to move. His dreams were becoming more and more real, and even when awake, he couldn't shake the feeling that the doll was watching him. He told himself it was just a nightmare, but deep down, he knew the truth. He had awakened something terrible with his actions. That night, the storm outside was fierce, lightning flashing across the sky as thunder boomed in the distance. Raymond lay in bed, drenched in sweat, unable to sleep. He could feel it. Tonight, something was going to happen. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Raymond's heart skipped a beat. There, in the doorway, stood the doll, its red eyes glowing brighter than ever. Slowly, it walked toward him, each step deliberate. The doll stopped at the edge of the bed, its cold, emotionless voice echoing in the room. "You can't escape!" Raymond wanted to scream, to run, but his body wouldn't move. It was as if invisible chains held him down. The doll climbed onto his chest, just like in his dreams, and wrapped its hands around his throat. Raymond's breathing grew shallow. His vision blurred as he felt the life draining from him. In his last moments, the doll whispered one final time, "You've paid for your sins." 2 days later, Raymond's father returned home to find his son dead in bed. his face twisted in agony, his mouth stuffed with cotton. And in the corner of the room, the forgotten doll sat silently, as if watching everything unfold.